you.
Salutations, ladies and doom. Welcome to podcast The Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy riddles, and all around convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone. Given one of our topics for tonight, it would have been funny if you had went with Toxic Love from Fern Gully, but damn.
Fuck.
It literally occurred to me as the song was playing. I was like, wait, what if he had done Toxic Love for this week because of the
All right.
thing we're doing? But
And I'm your
something to
host,
remember for next year, I suppose.
last time Lord Wannabe, the brainstorm of pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, mostly.
Yeah.
I think.
Uh. Okay. Yeah. So pretty stacked. Week for us. It's a lot less harder than I thought it would be, just because we found some new stuff. I honestly thought we did have a scare at one point that we were not going to have much because we did find things that we had already covered years prior.
Yeah, but a few seconds of googling and some keywords, and well, we're here now.
Yeah.
As Bill Burr would say, we're in this room now.
Yeah. All right. So this is originally from Jacobin.com, published February 14th, 2023. So last year. Socialism is Love by editors. I I'm sorry, that
I,
just
I mean, they can make the argument. I'm going to laugh at their argument probably when they make their argument, but I will allow them to make their argument. They're wrong, but I will allow them to make their arguments.
mhm. um Chocolate and flowers are cliche and socialism is love. For Valentine's Day, print subscriptions are just $14.
Wouldn't help. Wouldn't Can't help but notice there that for all of your socialist endeavors, my dears, you are charging money for subscriptions, and quite a lot of money at that, considering that even most streaming services are only like what, $10-$20 a piece. So
That's a month.
right. So,
Yeah.
but like, I get you have operating costs and everything, but even assuming you have operating costs and everything, which again sort of gives lie to the whole socialist model, I should think. But wouldn't like 14 cents have maybe been a better, like, less monetary promotion for you? Just saying, for all of your pretensions to love the working class, you don't seem to be the kind of people who consider it gauche to have to blow $14 on something. So to use your own paradigm against you, that strikes me as a little bit bougie. Because most people who are actually in the like lower and or working classes, they make use of things like dollar menus when dollar menus exist, and so on.
Hey, Don, this is only about a paragraph.
But let's move forward then.
It's hard to spin Valentine's Day as a revolutionary holiday, so let's keep this simple. Do better than chocolate and flowers today, and you'll help your favorite magazine keep going.
Okay, so this article was literally just shameless self-promotion.
Yeah. New subscribers will start with our new issue, Nationalism, which will be out this week. So last year, obviously. And for those of you hankering for some Valentine's Day content, we've got plenty of it. Okay. So I guess we'll just actually have to move on to our next thing then.
Yeah, this is why we double booked the articles, because this one was hilariously short and awfully self-promotional for someone who's supposed to be interested in things like the collective good. Again, just saying.
All right, give me a second. I think this one does have a little more meat to it. Let me check.
Hooray! Hooray!
We really gotta read these before we decide on them.
Yeah, I mean, with a title like that, though, I had to, because
Assumed.
dear God, what?
Okay, yeah, there's more for the next one. Okay. Okay. This one's a little older than the other one. It's from, okay, so this is from Jacobin.com. Published February 14th, 2019. Capitalism Killed Intimacy and Replaced It with Pornhub by Joanna Ramiro. If I say names wrong, I'm super sorry.
Yeah, he can't do names.
Unless it's said to me first, it's just hard to, because sometimes names don't sound the same when they're read to when they are said. So.
Anyway, into the breach once more we go.
With our subheader is, with our communities destroyed and our growing distance from each other, we humans of late capitalism are left with a deficient of intimacy and affection. I mean,
I don't see how capitalism is to blame for that.
No,
so far as it's true.
I mean, conclusion is wrong, but the premise. She's not wrong about the growing distance between people. That's.
Yeah, but unfortunately, ideologies like socialism are going to do nothing but exacerbate that distance.
Mm.
Anyway, moving forward.
Uh, when in October 2018, comedian. Ah, hello, Dragon Turtle. I'm doing well. Hope you're doing so too, man.
Hmm. Apparently, Jacobin is blaming capitalism for porn, essentially.
Well, loss of intimacy and connection of people, which, I mean, if you weren't trying to spin it with a socialist angle, I could somewhat see it.
Yeah, and that's basically what they're gonna do. So yeah, well, welcome to. In case you didn't remember or know from last year, Dragon Turtle, in the same way that December belongs to Christmas and October belongs to Halloween, so too February belongs to Valentine's Day.
All right. When in October 2018, comedian Ryan Creamer decided to start a Pornhub channel and publish a series of very wholesome videos onto the infamous adult content website. He did not expect fame to follow. As the 26-year-old college humor writer explained to BuzzFeed, uh, videos like
Okay, minor little bit of complaining here, but the fact that you're citing College Humor and BuzzFeed as though they are reputable, like, journalistic outlets
well, no,
is
the guy who got fame because he didn't do the explicit content on Pornhub is from College Humor.
right. It's just it.
You know what's
Are we really in the timeline where we have to treat BuzzFeed like a news outlet?
apparently they conducted an interview with the guy, so it's just how it goes, I guess. I agree, BuzzFeed is stupid, but
Moment of despair for the fact that we have to cite BuzzFeed as though it's a legitimate news source. Anyway, moving forward.
College Humor isn't that bad, right?
No, they're fine. They're or I guess I should say they were fine because I haven't really kept up with a lot of their most recent stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna
I
be
sus-
honest. Neither have I.
I suspect they might have fallen off the wagon like a bunch of other edgy people from the early 2000s who then realized that they or then thought that they shouldn't be edgy because oh but my platform, oh but my respectability, etc.
Yeah, okay, so let me restart that. As the 26-year-old college humor writer explained to BuzzFeed, videos like I tuck you in after you have come and I blow you a platonic kiss were a bit for his own amusement. The point was simply to draw laughs by reversing the usual porn formula that portrays nearly immediate, often hardcore fucking, but neglects the more real and human elements of sex, the awkward, the affectionate, and the intimate. Oh, hmm.
Okay, and that's fair and all, but on any other given day, the average like socialist or socialist adjacent party line is that sex should be as open and as communal and as frivolous and meaningless and as like revolutionary, quote unquote, as possible. You do realize wholesomeness requires some kind of metaphysical sentimentality in some sense,
Wait, hold
and
on. That's
normally metaphysics is something that this particular brand of socialism despises. Also, not to be an asshole or anything, but you do know that outside of Pornhub, there are plenty of places that do focus on romantic content that is wholesome and not explicitly sexual, right? Like romantic ASMR exists, Wattpad exists.
he should
Um,
know. I think he's seen a lot of it and read a lot of it.
I have. Um, there are so many apps that explicitly tell the lion's share of their content is romance stories, very often with a gay edge or an LGBTQ edge if we must, but like wholesome and or explicitly romantic rather than sexual content is definitely a thing in other formats. It just happens to not be existing on Pornhub because well, Pornhub, the clue is in the name a bit. Anyway, moving on.
All right. Unintentionally, Creamer tapped into something not only funny but actually yearned for by online consumers, which is to say, pretty much everyone worldwide. To be clear, Creamer's videos do exactly what they say on the title. They are shot as if from the viewpoint of someone looking at Creamer, who in turn interacts with the camera as if with the presumed object of his desire.
So he basically does the exact same thing that a majority of romantic ASMR type things do. Because that's also a thing. There are, explicitly story-based romantic ASMR, but there are also sort of acting-based ASMRs that treat the camera as if they are the person viewing the content. So again, this isn't some kind of capitalist conspiracy to prioritize Pornhub. It's the fact that in the particular market of Pornhub, porn is what people hub for, as opposed to the romance novel or romance content market, which is explicitly, romantic. Not saying there's never a sexual component to romance, that would be stupid to say, but in quite a lot of the romance content, or the ASMR romance content, or the, romance story content, sex is at best a, sidebar to the romantic element of it. To the point that I've met people who claim to be, asexual but not aromantic, who do appreciate romance novels and or romantic ASMR, but not sexual content, because being asexual and aromantic are two different things, evidently. Moving on.
And I hug you and say I had a really good time tonight, and then I go home. Creamer, who just like a grown-up all-boys school prefect, looks straight into the camera, says, "Okay, bring it in here," proceeds to hug the camera, and says with an earnest smile, "I had a wonderful time with you tonight. I will call you tomorrow."
So he's doing ASMR shorts, basically. The only revolutionary thing going on here seems to be that he is doing ASMR shorts on a porn site, and that's noteworthy and anti-capitalist somehow.
Alright, another one. In POV Forehead Kiss compilation, the comedian roleplays a series of scenarios, always ending with him sweetly puckering up to the camera, as if laying a kiss on the viewer's forehead. 25-second long, I tuck you in, sees Creamer wearing his ubiquitous sweater over shirt and tie with pajama pants while spreading a sheet and duvet over the imagined lover. Then once more he kisses and smiles for the viewer. Pornhub user comments on these videos range from simple amusement to genuine appreciation for the content. And I tuck you in, someone thanked the comedian for the best aftercare, honestly.
Okay, I realize that once again I'm being snarky and bitchy and repeating myself a bunch here, but one, this is once again indicative that whoever wrote this is an extremely bougie motherfucker, the definition of a champagne socialist, because most people refer to the blanket that goes over the bed as a comforter or an eiderdown, or very often just as a top blanket. Who in their right mind uses the word duvet, except satirically, like in the case of Terry Pratchett in Witches Abroad? And he's specifically satirizing the fact that it's bougie and foreign sounding. So again, given that almost no one uses the word duvet when what they mean in general is comforter or eiderdown or simply top blankets, the use of the word duvet really implies poshness. And yes, I'm a posh motherfucker enough to know what you meant by duvet, but the thing is, I'm well aware of the fact that when I say something like duvet, I'm using an unnecessary proper or posh word when most people would rather hear the word comforter, eiderdown, or top blanket. Just saying. Also, again, it really seems like what you're describing here are ASMR shorts or ASMR content, and the only subversion is that it's happening on Pornhub instead of all the other places where ASMR content or romance stories tend to happen.
Um,
Moving on.
Giant Turtle, even if you aren't asexual, it still scratches different itches. Hell, there's also just wholesome companionship in there as well.
Yes, but and that was at least part of my point. The premise that I'm working with here is the writer of this article seems to think that it's revolutionary and anti-capitalist for some reason that romantic content can occur on a porn site, not realizing the difference between the markets of romance versus sex or porn. Yes, there are sexual elements in romance stories, or in a lot of romance stories, but romance and sex are two different things. And yes, it is somewhat unique and a unique niche for this person to find themselves in to be doing what effectively amounts to ASMR content on a porn site, and all the more power to them as far as I'm concerned. But it's not revolutionary, it's not anti capitalist, and it's not subverting some kind of capitalist conspiracy. Because if your brain was working properly, you would know what we're dealing with here there are simply two different types of content, usually targeted at different markets, which isn't anti-capitalist. That's just capitalism doing what it does and filling different market niches for different people or for different reasons, etc. Moving on.
Alright, the combination of subjective camera angle together with Kramer's coy smile, at times nearly blushing, makes for footage that is less like a sketch and more akin to real interaction, especially for a generation used to the aesthetics of the video call.
You're literally just describing ASMR. Sorry. It's not new. It might be new to you because you live in a perpetually offended online socialist bubble, but yeah, the rest of us, especially the terminally online millennials and Zoomers, recognize the description of ASMR content when we see it. Moving on.
Where was I? The fourth wall is no more, and the audience is no longer just observing, but an active participant. In fact, the only other participant besides the person filming the subliminal message is this could be you. Nay, this is you. Being kissed on the forehead by this nice-looking young man. Watch Kramer's videos, you might feel like Pornhub user bored. 8021 did when they wrote, "Aw, this video really made me feel better after a bad day." Okay,
that's ASMR content you're describing, and the reaction most people have to ASMR content. As an avid consumer of ASMR content of many kinds, I am aware of this. The only revelatory thing that happened here is someone posted an ASMR video on a porn site, and this person seems to think that's anti-capitalist somehow.
Again, this is from 2019, so that's already old news by this point. So, stage affection and performed intimacy are nothing new, from the emotional labor done by sex workers through the ages to the booming business that renting friends and platonic lovers has become in places like Japan. But what is becoming a clear trend online is production and avid consumption of content mimicking the intimacy increasingly absent from our atomized lives.
Okay, fair enough, but that's not new either. Even before ASMR existed, romance novels were a thing. And before then, literal romance, like literature, was a thing. And in most cultures, at least most Western cultures, the avidest consumers of novels, of, legends, folklore, fantasy, and fiction are women. Because women idealize a lot. And so they look for, in the Middle Ages, it was the knight in shining armor. In the, slightly closer to modern day period, it was the bodice ripper. And Jane Austen and Enid Blyton and and Miss Radcliffe and so on and so on and so forth. Like, you're describing a phenomena that has been with us for at least as long as romance fiction as a thing has existed. Knight saves the princess from the dragon. Woman reading this story gets her rocks off. Body Tripper. Woman reading this story gets her rocks off by assuming she'll be attacked by a pirate or something. And on it goes. Hell, heterosexual women are even the largest consumer of gay romance stories, which sort of implies that heterosexual women even view fictional men as objects, but whatever.
Down.
I know. I got into a little bit of men's rightsy bullshit there, but like,
It's not bullshit.
it is funny. It is funny to me that even among like gay romances, heterosexual women are the majority viewers. Granted, there's probably a similar landslide among like lesbian porn being watched by straight dudes. So there's that. Moving on.
All right. Just look at the other internet phenomenon pointing towards this intimacy lack. The ever-growing community of ASMR YouTubers. ASMR, or Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, is the alleged pleasure, even possible tingling sensation triggered by a series of auditory cues, especially the distinct hearing of usually very quiet noises like the light smacking of lips when someone whispers, the scratch of a pencil on paper, or the sound of hair being combed. Sounds
Okay,
in some. Hold on. Last sentence.
Go ahead.
Sounds in some that we are only used to hearing only when in close proximity to another human being.
Okay, so you know vaguely what ASMR is. That, though, is only the earliest form of ASMR. Even in 2019, and I remember because, I was there and I lived through it, there was this subgenre of ASMR referred to as narrative or romantic ASMR. Case in point, the YouTuber Siren's son. And yes, I'm using him as an example because he's probably my favorite. Also because he, rather uniquely among all of the of all of the ASMR contributors, actually created a world a world building for his ASMRs to all coexist within the same multiverse, which yay. Yay for world building, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, the romantic subgenre of ASMR is very, very, very large and was even back in 2019. So you are just now apparently becoming aware of like the oldest of the old school versions of ASMR, but I hate to burst this bubble for you. Romantic ASMR is also at least as old as that by the point of 2019 when you were creating this article. So once again, even you must admit that all that was unique about the guy who posted his ASMR content on Pornhub is that he posted it on Pornhub rather than YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or wherever the fuck people usually post ASMR content. Moving on.
Yeah, okay. It is perhaps no coincidence that It is perhaps no coincidence then that, much like Creamers, the majority of these videos are based on a single actor performing to the camera as if interacting with the viewer. The jargon of ASMR includes words like triggers, which one associated with emotional reactions or now pertaining to getting goosebumps from crackling sounds, and personal attention, where the ASMR artist comes extremely close to the camera, whispering affectionately about the subject's qualities. Indeed, a 2015 study by researchers of Swansea University found that the most efficient ASMR triggers were whispering, which got 75% of the participants tingling, and the so-called personal attention, 69% tingling efficiency.
Okay, I do appreciate the study because my approach to these kind of studies is always trust but verify. It is good to have the actual data to support things rather than just going off of common sense. But I hate to burst this bubble. This was colloquially known forever and ever and always. What you're describing there is what we in the trade call a seductive tone. The rhetorical come hither, which again is at least as old as romance fiction. Like the idea of a hero or heroine of a romance story being incredibly seductive to the point of having an almost glamour-like quality about them is as old as the freaking hills. Probably considerably older than that, considering, in the event that there are actual supernatural entities involved, the She and other supernatural beings have been using glamour and seduction for pretty much since the Stone Age, we can gather. Anyway, moving on.
Oh, not sure, Giant Turtle. Not sure about that. We use doobies in our house, but it's not. Oh, duvets. Sorry, I think your computer somehow autocorrected. But it's not the comforter. It's a protective case around it, so you don't have to wash the comforter. Similar to pillowcases, just annoying to get on.
Okay, but still, the average person is not going to use the word duvet. The average person is going to use maybe the word eiderdown, or just call it a comforter or a top blanket, or hell, a like blanket covering is probably more likely to happen than fancy French word duvet. But anyway, moving on.
Whispering and physical tenderness are uncommon modes of interaction between strangers in our society. Rather, they are key aspects of human intimacy, which we experience for the first time as newborns, when we are often in physical closeness to the adults caring for us, who in turn will often speak softly and tenderly to easily startled infants. You don't need to be a disciple of Sigmund Freud to understand the
Pavlovian.
Pavlovian connection between the sound of niceties whispered in your ear and a feeling of safety and emotional intimacy.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to back the fuck up away from the childhood intimacy stuff, right? Because what is germane to this particular article is the concept of seduction or seductive whispering, which again, a thing that has been known since, the hills underneath the hills underneath the hills. That being the case, you really shouldn't draw a parallel between the coddling voices of, caregivers in early childhood and the seductive whispers of people who are post-pubescent, because that might draw some very, very, very ugly parallels. And I don't care if Freud is a respected psychologist or not. Just in the same way, I don't care if John Money was a respected psychologist or not. The answer to that is a big ol' nope. Do not compare the coddling voices of early childhood with the seductive voices of puberty, please. Because that is fucking creepy. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Besides profit accumulation, capital places great importance on two things. A, the societal reproduction of the worker at the smallest cost possible. B, the erosion of infrastructures that might enable a worker to leverage influence over capital. Traditionally, this has meant the election of the nuclear family as the ideal social unit under capitalism. The basic survival of the mostly male worker was guaranteed by the unpaid labor of another, mostly female worker.
No. It was okay. I don't know how we leapt all the way from Freudian ew to to anti-capitalist gobbledygook already, but one, in everything prior to the modern, like, as in, like, Cold War era, it was perfectly normal for the average person to have an extended family household. The nuclear family was actually not really that emphasized until Cold War period. Secondly, in traditional societies, the assumption was the man's authority existed outside of the home, the woman's authority took over inside the home. Hence, very often you would find someone who was working outside the home, comes home with his pay packets, and then delivers his finances onto the wife or the household servants that were then expected to take care of those finances. The idea that the man works to make the money and then give that money to the wife, who can then decide what purchases, if any, need to be made. That is at least as old and considerably older than the idea you're trying to weld into people's heads that capitalism is some encroaching unnatural force, which it isn't. One, the nuclear family as a hard unit didn't take place in, like, societal propaganda until the Cold War, and two, usually the way it worked was that the man worked outside the home and then brought the resources from said work into the home, whereupon it was the wife who made the financial decisions, and or the household servants, depending on how ritzy and how old we're talking. But yeah, that is a categorical ahistorical bullshit narrative you're weaving there. Extended families have been a thing for much longer than nuclear families have, and more to the point, the wife has very often been the one to be considered in charge of the household, whereas the man's traditional role was provisioning outside the household. Moving on.
All right. Of course, the nuclear family still persists, but in the world of late capitalism, where your food can be procured from 20 different restaurants and delivered to your door within 30 minutes, where there are either machines or service apps to do your dishes, hang your shelves, and mend your clothes, where your next sexual encounter is merely a swipe and a chaser away, where increasingly trading one regressive social structure for another.
Do you know who and what was at the forefront of the sexual revolution that ultimately gave rise to this kind of hookup culture? Do you know? Because it was very often feminist and or socialist academia that was at the heart of the sexual revolution of the 70s. Thank you. Or 60s and 70s. So, how is the hookup culture capitalism's fault when it rose out of the deconstructionist post-Frankfurt School mentality of the 60s and 70s? Not to mention that even today, people seek emotional and romantic and sexual intimacy more often than they hook up. The only people who are at liberty to hook up in this way that you are disapproving of are the exact same rich, white, hyper-educated in modern-day academia twats who are so frivolous with their time and or resources that they are willing to engage in hookup culture. The vast majority of us really just want a significant other in our lives, be it one or multiple if you're polyamorous or polygamous or whatever. But most of us still want steady, monogamous partners in romantic and sexual relationships. And that has nothing to do with capitalism, but the opposite of it may indeed have something to do with the critical theorist woo-woo academia nonsense of the 60s and 70s. Not further to mention that capitalism is not, quote unquote, late. The only reason you think that late capitalism is even a thing is because you think that it will eventually die and we will, quote unquote, grow out of it. But I hate to burst this bubble again. Capitalism has existed alongside and supplementary to basically every societal structure we've ever had as a species. The only difference between what people generally call capitalism and what people generally call barter is the intermediary middleman of the signifier currency. But even barter operates on basically the same axioms as what we could call capitalism, just without the intermediary signifier. So late capitalism is a thing only in your ideology and in your own head. There's no reason to think that it's some thing that's going to eventually just die. It can be interwoven with a social democracy and maybe mitigated or mixed with other things, but it's not going to just up and die because Hegel's conception of history was wrong, and therefore everyone, including but not limited to Marx and Engels, who took his historical dialectic as fact, are also wrong. Concepts don't just fade into freaking nowhere. Most concepts tend to persist in one form or another. The change is in the form and the function usually, rather than the system. Moving on.
All right. Moreover, as theorist Mark Fisher so aptly described in Capitalism Realism, work and life become inseparable. The gig economy sees you using your own bike to deliver meals, and your watch buzzes 24/7 with emails from a client looking to hire your freelance services. As production and distribution are reconstructed, Fisher argues, so are nervous systems. Our productivity is higher than ever, our accessibility to employer too, and with our communities destroyed, our family units eroded, our emotional and even physical proximity to others increasingly non-existent, we humans of late capitalism are left with a deficient of intimacy and affectionate attention.
Okay, late capitalism is a ideological construct in your framework and only in your framework. There's no reason to think that capitalism can even be, quote unquote, late. But I thought it was the usual left-wing position that the gig economy was better than corporation work, because that way you're not a slave to a corporate structure and not boxed into the cubicle battery farm. And two, most of the quote-unquote eroding of the nuclear family is the fault of the aforementioned sexual revolution and even more so, the aforementioned feminist and or socialist critical theory nonsense of the 60s and 70s. You are literally blaming capitalism for something that you can be reasonably demonstrated to have done your own selves. The post-Frankfurt School critical theory conception that the nuclear family was somehow oppressive and should be reworked and redistributed was a socialist and or social justice approach. Don't blame your enemy for something that you did. You can clap with glee that the nuclear family is gone because you might have successfully killed it, but please, when you finally realize that it was probably a bad thing, you don't get to undermine and unravel that. Because it wasn't capitalism's fault. It was the sexual revolution underpinned by the academia of the 60s and 70s, which is underpinned even more by the academia of the 1890s, which is underpinned even more by the academia of the 1800s and even late 1700s. Because it all ultimately goes back to Hegel and Rousseau, the two most evil philosophers in human history, as far as I'm concerned. Moving on.
Yet, rest assured that the perverse inventiveness of the capitalist system will provide. Wholesome asexual videos on porn websites and ASMR YouTubers are just two examples of the commodification of intimacy and its meditated consumption by our starved souls. Even podcasts are usually friendly conversations that enter your living room when you need company and entertainment, in a way that people used to do when impromptu visits weren't so frowned upon, perhaps. Okay, that feels a bit. Huh.
That has nothing to do with capitalism, and honestly, you're basically just complaining that capitalism is effective at this point, because what you're describing is capitalism realized there was a market and then did what it needed to do, at least in part, to fill that market. That's you're sarcastically like poo-pooing, oh, capitalism will provide, but unironically, you just gave a list of dozens of ways that it actually did. And not to mention this, but most of that like cottage industry, that visitor culture, that your neighbor will come over bearing um pies and cakes and whatever else you may need, or will go on to check on you. That's not even capitalism. That was an affectation of some strain of traditionalism, and some strain even before that of simple like etiquette, and quite a lot of academic ink has been spilled on how those things were bad and how that was the wrong kind of collectivism. And I'm pretty sure you can still get people bitching and moaning that if anyone ever returns to a trad wife role, or a suburban trad wife role especially, that is reactionary, fascist, etc., counter-revolutionary nonsense. So once again, stop pretending like any collectivist element at all is your kind of collectivist element, because we all know you would hate the Helen Lovejoy or Bree Vandekamps of this world coming bearing muffins, or coming bearing Christmas cards, or coming bearing emotional labor of any different kind. And you want to know how I know? Because we've literally covered articles saying wives shouldn't put effort into maintaining a social order. Wives shouldn't put effort into thank you cards, or um, Christmas cards, or get well cards, because that's emotional labor that they're not being paid for. It's an irrational. It's some kind of irrational perfectionism that makes certain wives desire to bake baked goods and give them to their neighbors in a suburban environment, etc. And again, if your issue is, and it is mostly with the stereotypical suburban, again, Bree Vandekamps or Helen Lovejoys of this world, the Martha Tisdales and etc., you can thank the Cold War, because suburbia basically didn't exist before the Cold War. Thanks. Um, but even then, by your own standards, that would be an affectation of traditionalism that you hate, and that you think is unpaid emotional labor on the part of wives and mothers and so on, which is bullshit, but never mind.
Moving on.
Moving on.
Real proximity, real human connection is becoming anathema to the post-millennial. Our sense of community is being replaced by its generic version administered via a screen and high-definition speakers.
Yes, because the activism of the 60s and 70s explicitly advocated that people should be atomized individuals and not rely on things like community. The issue is that socialism wants everything to be a community and wants everything to be collective, because that means they would have power over it. The reason why they were so opposed to traditionalism in the way they were, at least some of them, again, I maintain that there was a genuine groundswell of populist and libertarian support for the abolishment of the capital F, capital V family values era. But some of the academics evidently wanted to undermine those things, not for irreverence's sake, not for liberty's sake, not for individualism's sake, but specifically because that definition of community, or that definition of societal cohesion, was anathema to their proposed form of collectivism. Now, I can look at that and go, why don't we abolish both? But you specifically want community and collectivism, but you only want it on your terms, to the point that you will advocate against it when society's structures go against you. But when you have successfully done that and you are now at the top of the hierarchy, then all of a sudden we need to reinstitute community and traditionalism because we're the ones in charge of it now. Fuck you very much. If you wanted the family values TradCon bullshit gone, and so much the better in my opinion, good for you, but you don't then get to swoop in and replace it with, okay, but we do need some kind of societal and community cohesion, therefore let's all be socialist. No, wrong. I refuse. Goodbye. Moving on.
For me, it's disconcerting, this transformation of feeling into a series of hollow ciphers, and I would argue that, much like our Victorian forebears fought for collectivity and togetherness through unionization, so must we fight for human intimacy that involves real touching, skin on skin, that involves real whispering and certainly real personal attention. The path to that is now more than ever paved by politics. To fight for intimacy and care is to fight for leisure time and for consent. It is to fight for housing and for living wages.
Okay, here's the thing. Romance and sexuality belong in the private sphere. Politics, if it belongs anywhere, belongs in the public sphere. And I didn't catch this until just now, but that made it plain. You literally want your politics, your socialism, your economic model, your whatever, to extend to human intimacy, which is the most private of the private spheres. Hence, you can get fucked. Politics does not belong in the private sphere, it belongs only in the public sphere. And morality doesn't belong in the public sphere, it belongs only in the private sphere. You cannot combine these two things. When people try to combine politics and morality, they inevitably create tyranny and totalitarianism. The public sphere is public, the private sphere is private, and they need to remain separate things. Morality belongs in the private sphere and only the private sphere. Politics belongs in the public sphere and only the public sphere if it belongs anywhere. Which doesn't mean to say that it belongs everywhere in the public sphere either, but if it belongs anywhere, the place it belongs is in certain aspects of the public sphere. When you try to combine these two things, that is the exact moment where I say fuck you. When the TradCon wife clutches her pearls because won't somebody please think of the children and won't somebody please think of my morality in relation to something going on in the public sphere or even something going on in someone else's private sphere, that is the point where they can get fucked. And this right here, this here and now, is where you can get fucked. Politics has no right to the private sphere, just as morality has no right to the public sphere in a sane world. End of discussion. Moving on.
So let us fight for it, lest one day in a not so distant future we find ourselves in a world where the only reminder of our humanity is the yearning for a video of a wholesome red-haired boy tucking us in after we've come. Jesus Christ. Thought that you end the entire article on that.
Yeah, no. I am fine with my ASMR and my romance content. And I don't think that this is in any way a solution to any sexual issues or intimacy issues we might have as a society. Again, morality belongs in the private sphere and only the private sphere. Politics belongs in the public sphere and only the public sphere. And in both cases, I would limit both spheres or both aspects to as limited import in either sphere as possible. That is how you create a sane society. You do not get points for blending morality and politics as if they're the same fucking thing, and therefore get to weasel their tentacles into both the public and private spheres simultaneously. Fuck off, please.
Okay, so Giant Turtle said, we're waiting for the last article to load. Typical leftist strategy. 1. Destroy the thing. 2. Point to void in where thing was. 3. Insert thing now uncontested.
It's not even a leftist strategy. It's specifically a Hegelian strategy. Again, I will blame literally all the evils of Western society on Hegel and Rousseau. They have those two. Like, if we go based on how much negative things were the result of a given philosopher or a given philosophy, Hegel and Rousseau are the most evil motherfuckers to have ever lived. Because every person who's ever done anything wrong in the preceding centuries traces their movements back to Hegel or Rousseau, and usually some combination of both. And when Hegel and Rousseau get together, they make Lovecraftian nightmares. They make freaking socio-political shoggoths rather than babies. That is the only thing that the combination of Hegelian approaches and Rousseauian approaches have ever done. They create socio-political shoggoths, and I hate them.
All right. So, last article?
Yes. And now I'm imagining Hegel as the goat with 10,000, as the black goat with 10,000 young. That is a remarkably appropriate image.
So this is originally from Vogue.com. 10 fictional couples we're still in love with by I'm going to butcher this name, and I'm so sorry to the writer of this article. Gia Yetzikel. I hope that's how you say it. I'm sorry if I mispronounce it.
I assume she's French, maybe?
It's Yetikyel.
Yeah, I have no idea.
This was published December 28th, 2023. So, Ross and Rachel, Carrie and Big, Edward and Bella, Romeo and Juliet. What do these pairings all have in common?
They're all varying degrees of insufferable.
Even Romeo and Juliet?
Like, not to be a contrarian motherfucker, but Romeo and Juliet was a cautionary tale about how young love can result in destruction and terror. And
You know what?
if you actually read the play, that is sort of what happens.
No, that's fair. I remember the play and actually looking back on it with that context, yeah. For one thing, not one of them made our list of the best fictional couples in film and television.
Good. Huh. Most of them don't belong there.
That's right. No breaks, jilted weddings, imprinting by werewolves, or deaths by poison here. Okay.
I mean, I would be happy if a werewolf imprinted on me, but that's neither here nor there.
Stop being a thirsty-ass bitch, Dalton.
I'm sorry. I'm 28 years old and I'm still a fucking virgin. Leave me alone.
I'm 24 and a virgin. You don't hear me bitching?
Yes, because you still have at least 6 years of people are likely to find you romantically attractive. Whereas I, especially in the gay community, have until 30 to find someone that I'll pretty much be certain to die alone. So I have 2 years to check this off of my life's to-do list, and after that it basically gets hopeless. So yeah.
No offense, but just that tidbit that you've stated several times about the gay community, it feels like there's a lot of issues that kind of need to be fixed or at least addressed with that community.
Oh yeah, no, it totally does. But I don't make the rules, and I'm not stupid enough to think I can single-handedly rewrite the rules. But them's are the rules at the moment, anyway.
All right, who did then, you ask? Come along as we revisit the on-screen sweethearts that continue to capture our affections, proving that some love stories are simply unforgettable. Spoilers and plenty of swooning ahead. Allie and Noah, The Notebook from 2004. I've never seen The Notebook.
I have seen The Notebook, and yes, you can make the obligatory gay jokes now.
Why?
But because it's one of those cheesy, hyper feminine rom coms that gay guys are stereotypically into. But anyway, I didn't find anything particularly noteworthy about this couple, so I might be the odd one out.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Notebook is so like cheesy and hallmarky that it really it's one of those they're laying on the romance very, very thick, and it comes off as more annoying than it does relatable or interesting.
Best case scenario: if you are old, you are a rich man and willing to get a woman at least partially a gold digger, or at least or someone as. Oh, sorry, I forgot the first one. To be fair, how much better are the age standards for straight people and lesbians? That actually might be fair.
Fair play, but
As
yeah,
someone as desperate as you and they know it. Okay, yeah. Best case scenario: if you are old, you are a rich man and willing to get a woman at least partially a gold digger, or someone as desperate as you and they know it. Yeah. Both are fair points. So
yeah, fair play, which is why it's a really, really bad thing to be a 30-year-old version. Hence, hence why I am 2 years away from committing romantic seppuku, because I have 2 years.
Dalton, giant turtle. Dalton, I want a werewolf to imprint on me. Dalton gets a pack of werewolves, but they are all female or twinks. I mean, to be fair, you don't mind females.
I hate you, Dragon Turtle.
I mean, the
Why
twinks, yeah,
would you
that would bother you. That would bother
why would you ruin that for me?
again.
The entire attractiveness of a werewolf, at least for me, is that they are, at least classically, the werewolf is the beast male. That there's a like duality of romantic archetypes, at least in among male characters. There's the beast male and the noble male. I am largely the noble male, and I want the beast male, which does
I'm,
mean, raw, unvarnished machismo and masculinity. So
I,
the very idea of twink werewolves pisses me off, and romantic werewolves, or yeah, female werewolves, just also kind of tick me off,
I
because
mean, you would
again,
still kind
the
of get that raw thing. So
right, but masculinity isn't attractive in women. It's only attractive in men, at least by my standards.
yeah, okay, it's good you clarified with your standards because I feel like you and I would have a disagreement there. But
Yeah, and that's fair. Brainstormer can have a harem full of wolf girls, but because werewolves are traditionally the bestial and unvarnished machismo archetype, that would just be cruel if I wound up with the one pack of werewolf twinks or the one pack of she wolves. I would basically I would tell the female wolves, if they imprinted on me, to make Brainstormer happy. That would be my move.
all right, okay. So let me read the description they have for the Notebook one. We kick things off with one of the most memorable romance films of the 21st century. What makes Ali and Noah such a good couple is that through years of miscommunication, family issues, and even old age, they continue to choose each other. And isn't that what love is truly about? I mean, depending on who you ask on their definition of love, but
I mean, yeah, it's cute, but the problem with the Notebook is it's laid on really, really thick, so it kind of pulls you out of the enjoyment factor.
all right. So these aren't numbered, obviously. So I'm not going to read a number or anything.
Yeah, next.
Ben and Leslie from Parks and Recreation. You haven't
I
you haven't
have
seen that.
seen I have seen the occasional clip of Ron Swanson, and Ron Swanson is based. Ron
Yeah,
Swanson is right up there with Malcolm Tucker as two of my favorite characters.
like I'm not
But
gonna
like,
lie, I honestly feel like I could have been Ron Swanson at some point in my life, but
yeah, yeah. Don't cut yourself short just yet. You are only 24. You got some years yet to Swansonize yourself if you want to. But yeah, I have no larger interest in watching Parks and Rec. Ron Swanson seems like the only tolerable character. That and maybe Aziz Ansari's character, because
Ben,
Aziz, I
not
like
Ben, not Ben, um,
I like Aziz Ansari in most things that I've ever seen him in. So,
Tom. It's
but
Tom. Not
yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, Tom. But apart from Tom and of course the based of the based, Ron Swanson, um, I don't think I can tolerate most of the other characters, and that
They're
doesn't
not
bode
bad.
well for me because Parks and Rec isn't even usually the kind of show that I'd like to watch anyway.
They're not bad. Um, I've seen a little bit of their relationship, like I've seen compilations and stuff of Ben and Leslie, and they're good. They're well, as it says here, two ambitious, career-focused people falling in love. Doesn't always pan out perfectly, but Ben and Leslie grew into their relationship while learning to navigate the big plans they each set out for their futures, even if that meant Ben putting his own career on ice for a bit.
I have no context for this, so I have no
Well,
comment on
okay,
this.
they're kind of my how I would prefer a relationship is give and take. Like they're partners.
Mm.
So yeah, you'll like this one. Tara and Willow, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Based.
Though it's weird that they have an image of Buffy and Willow here instead of Willow and Tara.
I think that might be a bit of a Freudian slip on the part of the person who organized the article. Or they're just not familiar enough with Buffy to know the difference, which would actually piss me off. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and assume they couldn't find a good picture of Willow and Tara together.
Although Tara and Willow never got their happy ending, their relationship made history as one of the first lesbian love stories on a popular TV show. Explicit, by the way, as well. Not
Right, but I mean that sounds a bit like a participation trophy because you're not talking about the characters, you're talking about they were a lesbian couple and that's the
they were
important part. No.
that. I think they were adjusting at first. So
Okay.
Tara started as a shy and almost secretive character who befriended Willow in college, and they ended up going from witchy pals to genuine partners. I kind of wish there would be a little more there, but
Yeah, there are books that could be written about Willow and Tara and how awesome they are together. And not gonna lie, in that kind of situation, I am totally a Willow type. I would destroy the world if something happened to my lover if I found a lover that I actually
you have
could.
legitimately said that you would go full on Castlevania Dracula if I was hurt, and I'm your
Yeah,
best.
no, yeah, straight up.
Oh.
Anyone who I care about, if anything happens to them, I'm fucking going Castlevania Dracula. They were the only reason on earth for me to tolerate human life.
Yeah, I feel like it would be 50 times worse if it was your lover.
Honestly, I don't know because I have yet to find my my one and only dude. So at the moment, I would say no, but that might change in the event that I actually do find my significant other. But yeah, no. Anyone who I care about. If anything untoward happens to them, the world will burn. I swear to fucking God.
Dragon Turtle, I think female werewolves are typically depicted as monsters, sex irrelevant, or more like tomboys or Amazons than mistaking them for men. That might just be R34 talking, but you could say that about any depiction of them besides the monster.
No, and yeah, that's fair. But as a general rule, because this is one of the things that makes pansexuals' heads explode when they talk to me. Because the difference between a pansexual and a bisexual is basically this: a bisexual person has different standards of attractiveness based on whether the person is male or female. A pansexual person does not consider gender to be a variable. I am a bisexual, which means, in my case, that when I'm looking at men, I find strength and height and the sort of paragon type morality to be attractive. When I'm looking at women, I generally go for the hyper intellectual goth or witchy type character. That's like my standards are very, very traditional when it comes to masculinity and femininity. I like extremely feminine women and extremely masculine men, with the one exception of I generally like youth better than I like facial hair in men. Like I prefer my men like clean shaven and permanently young, that rather than like Grizzly Adams dish.
Giant Turtles, so like Raven. I mean, who didn't like
Yes,
Raven? Let's be fully honest.
Raven was one of my first female crushes. Yes, Raven is awesome.
Yeah, but then again, who didn't like Raven? Come on.
This is a very good question, but apparently there are entire groups of people who prefer Starfire to Raven. I am not one of them. I do not understand people who are one of them. I just know that they exist.
I mean, she was a cool character. I saw more like I could be a friend to her than
Yeah, like Starfire strikes me as one of those people who would drain the energy from her friends very, very easily because she's so hyper. Whereas Raven is she's
chill.
Daria with she's Daria with magical powers, basically.
I don't know. I just think there are ways like the tomboy waifu sort of thing where you can have some masculinity without clashing with femininity,
No,
and some
no, and if
yeah.
that is your thing, then by all means go ahead. It's just not my thing. I prefer extremely like I'm not opposed to powerful women, but I prefer women to have intellectual and or like magical power. Whereas when it comes to men, the men I'm attracted to are the paragons with super strength, as we will get into later on in the episode.
Okay. Uh, okay. So next one is Fran Fine and Maxwell Sheffield from The Nanny. This was a good ass show.
Yeah, also based. This
Yeah.
one is also correct.
All right. The will they won't they dynamic of the recently widowed Broadway producer and his children's eccentric nanny had many of us gobsmacked in front of our television sets, especially when Mr. Sheffield finally said, "I love you" to Miss Fine, and then promptly took it back. I remember that. Between their zany bits and talent for physical comedy, this duo felt like the '90s equivalent of Lucy and Ricky Ricardo.
I mean, hell, Mr. Sheffield literally pulled a Miss Fine. You got some explaining to do at one point in an episode. So literally, but small asterisk here. Of the couples on the nanny, Cece and Niles take it. I'm sorry, but they do.
They're good. I will admit that. I will fully admit that. I'll be
I
honest.
don't have anything against Fran and Max, but of the two,
Uh,
CC and Niles were a much, I think, better couple, especially because you weren't exactly expecting it. Whereas the entire conceit of the show was very much a will they, won't they.
yeah.
With Niles and Cece, I felt like they earned it more because it wasn't supposed to be the main plot of the show.
Mm, um, full. Yeah, I agree. Hmm, I don't really. I thought I had some, but all right. David and Patrick from Schitt's Creek. 20. You know that show?
I am aware that it exists. I know nothing about it.
All right. All right. If you binge watch it, Schitt's Creek,
I
during
think it's supposed to be Schnitz Creek, but someone had to know what they were doing when they made that show, when they made that title, because everyone has at least at one point said shit as as opposed to
I've always heard,
Schnitz.
like, I've literally heard people call it Schitt's Creek.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be Schnitz Creek, but
There's no N though. It's
again, someone had to know what they were doing. So, meh.
if you binge watch Schitt's Creek during quarantine, then you also probably fell in love with David and Patrick's relationship. They had no shortage of up and downs, but Patrick's rendition of "Simply the Best" was so endearing, and David's unique proclamation of love so undeniably charming. Seeing them happily married by the end of the series was exactly what we needed in 2020.
Okay, I'm gonna have to watch Schnitz Creek now, just to correctly pass judgment on this couple.
I don't have anything to say because, again, it's one of those shows that I had heard a lot about, but I never really got into because it just never seemed like my thing.
Like I'm the same way. I knew it existed, and I kept seeing like ads and stuff for it, but I knew nothing about it.
Jim and Pam from The Office.
Also, relatively unfamiliar with this one, so
I'm
I
aware
can't.
of them. I just, I don't really have any strong feelings towards it. Again, the Parks and Rec is where I got into, like, the guy who created The Office also did Parks and Rec and also did Brooklyn Nine-Nine. The latter two are kind of my favorite shows. Some of my favorite shows I've watched. With Jim and Pam came the worthy reminder never to give up on love, even when it's with a colleague at your paper company in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
And that sounds nice and everything, and I have no reason to think that it's wrong. I'm unfamiliar with this franchise.
John Krasinski was Jim.
Yes, I remember that bit because everyone and their mother was casting him as Reed Richards, and then
Actually,
Multiverse of Madness gave it to us, and then
you know what's funny?
apparently they're gonna take it away from us because, meh.
You know what's funny? He was also up when they were making the MCU. He was up to play Captain America.
I would say I can't see it, but then again, before Chris Evans got cast as Steve, he did he also didn't really see it. Seemed
Well,
like the
okay.
kind of guy who could play him, but of course,
I mean, Jack Ryan. If you look at him in Jack Ryan, the show, he's kind of like Captain America there.
I mean, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Although on Reacher, I get distracted by Reacher because
No, not Reacher, Jack Ryan.
I know, but yeah,
Those are two different shows, though.
I know, but I have no reason to watch Jack Ryan because it's not my kind of show, and the main actor isn't even that hot. Whereas Alan Ritchson is quite hot.
So the next one is Han Solo and Princess Leia from Star Wars.
I mean, duh. Yes.
I mean, so I don't mind them, and I think they're cool, but issue-wise, given the acquisition by Disney in 2012, a lot of their building a relationship has been made non-canon.
Yeah, the undoing of quote unquote legends is bullshit here.
The expanded universe.
Yeah, but yeah, the undoing of the EU really borks Star Wars in so many ways, but never mind. At least in terms of the movies prior to the Disney acquisition, Han and Leia work. So yeah.
Let's ignore the whole Luke and Leia kissing thing and instead focus on the absolutely fun chemistry between Leia and Han. Rugged scoundrel Han Solo and fearless Princess Leia were a power couple waiting to happen. From their witty banter laced with just the right amount of malice to the iconic "I love you, I know," Han and Leia's love story was written in the stars.
Excuse you, the correct term is scruffy-looking nerf herder. Not scoundrel.
Who's scruffy looking?
Yeah.
Next one is Marshall and Lily from How I Met Your Mother. They actually were really good. To be fair, they were
Again,
really the only stable relationship.
this was another one of the ones that I slept on, so I have no comment.
Full honesty, they were, well, to be fair, they were the only stable relationship throughout most of the series.
Mm-hmm.
And
All I know about How I Met Your Mother is Neil Patrick Harris plays Barney, and he's a bastard, and Allison Hannigan has a role in it, and I've only ever seen her a couple of times in reruns.
um, to be honest, I'm gonna be honest, their dynamic is kind of what I want with my significant other. They're weird, crazy, but they both ground each other in some ways.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm at a disadvantage here because most of these have been sitcoms, and it's been a long time since I bothered with sitcoms.
Honestly, sitcoms have kind of fallen to the wayside in terms of media these days.
Yeah, and most of the sitcoms that I bother with are like from the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm. Many, if not most, relationships on How I Met Your Mother were complete messes. But one couple that we could always get behind was Marshall and Lily. Even with their brief breakup in the earlier seasons, these two remained one another's biggest cheerleaders throughout the series. Besides, for a sitcom with so much silliness, Marshall and Lily's relationship felt surprisingly realistic.
Again, I don't know because I haven't seen this and therefore have no comment.
I don't know how you're going to feel about this one. Amy and Rory from Doctor Who.
I mean, the correct pairing in this period is River and the Doctor, but yeah, fine. The Pawns were also good.
To be fair, without them, River and the
Yeah, I
Doctor.
know because we need them to get River in the first place. But yeah, like the I will literally stand by a box that contains you for 1,000 years. Like Rory is a long suffering motherfucker, man.
But he got
he
the redhead though. He got the
he is the Kenny of science fiction, and I love Rory for it. And Amy is one of my favorite companions of all time. But then again, Series 5 of Doctor Who is probably peak New Who, in my opinion. Maybe not peak of all of Doctor Who. That would probably be the Seventh Doctor's era, but yeah, the Series 5 of Doctor Who was peak Doctor Who. And I will forever simp for River and the Doctor, no matter which incarnation the Doctor happens to be in. So there. But I also really, for the love of God, Big Finish. Give me 12. Give me 12 and River's adventures on Beryllium, please. I want that. Because you know he brought the time machine with him, and therefore you know there must be hundreds of thousands of adventures they could do on Big Finish if they wanted. And I want that. But that's neither here nor there. We're talking about the Pawns. The Pawns are amazing, and I love them, and they are a great couple, and they gave us River, and that's good and everything. And I like their off-screen ending was literally being zapped back into the past and basically living, albeit in the 19 teens, a or was it the later 1800s that they got zapped back to. But one of them,
there is a, if I remember correctly, there is a deleted scene where Roy's dad meets his grandson that they adopted, and he was older. I think he was supposed to be like either in his 90s or 80s, and he was from New York. So, and if we're going time wise, that would mean that I think roughly early 1900s.
Wait, why did Amy and Rory have to adopt? It's not like Amy is infertile. That's silly. But I I like I like the fact that even the sad, tragic ending for the Pawns was they got to finally have their quote unquote normal life together and everything. And that it also kind of parallels what happens with 12 and the Doctor living their 20, I think it's 28 years, or is it 26 years? But anyway, the night on Beryllium where basically they get to be husband and wife finally. It's very similar to that. So good for the pawns, and I do like that Rory finally got Amy to take his name in the past, because it's like, oh, finally I get to actually take the male role in this relationship. But yeah, anyway, moving on.
In honor of, I'm going to butcher this, Nikuti Gatwa, recently taking on the mantle of the 15th Doctor, this spot goes to Amy and Rory Pawn. Rose and the Doctor are close runner-ups, but Amy and Rory's love story was the first time the revamped 2005 Doctor Who focused on romance. Although
Rose... one, Rose and the Doctor were not a romantic relationship. Two, if you're going to mention characters that deserve a runner-up spot, the fact that you didn't go with River and the Doctor pisses me off. And of course, three, Ncuti Gatwa being the 15th Doctor should have nothing to do with the fact that Amy and Rory deserve this spot. River and the Doctor probably also deserve a spot, and all other things being equal, I would have preferred them here rather than the pawns. But yeah, the pawns are awesome on their own merits. They don't need also ran status.
Although their final episode was devastating, who could forget Roy waiting centuries as he protected Amy in Pandora's box, or Amy choosing to be touched by a weeping angel just so she had the chance to live the rest of her life with Rory.
Okay, not to be a complete and utter stickler asshole here, but it wasn't Pandora's box, it was the Pandorica. And a real Doctor Who fan would know that, which tells me that this person is the filthiest of filthy casuals. Moving on.
Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth from Pride and Prejudice, specifically 2005 version. Need I say more?
Yeah. This is sort of a duh, because it's one of the quintessential classics of English literature. I haven't watched the specific version, so there's that. But whatever.
Need I say more? From the glances full of longing to the hand-flexing scene to Darcy stuttering, "I love you." This period piece, based on the classic 1813 novel by Jane Austen, will take your breath away. All right.
There's a lot of dead weight on that list that probably could have been moved.
All right, so now we're moving on to a fun thing that we actually came up with 2 weeks ago, just so we had something. Okay.
And mockery ensues.
So heads, because we're going to flip for a coin and see who goes first.
Okay.
Head, what do you call it?
Heads.
Okay, yeah, you go first then. So for context wise, this is Mind Dalton's top 5 list of we can fix them.
Yes, and mockery is entirely fair game, and no, neither of us is ever going to let the other one live this down.
No, and if you guys want to, please put your top 5 in the comments. So number 1.
Oh, you're going in descending order. I thought we were going in ascending order, but never mind.
Yeah, I forgot to ask that, and I already pulled up like the pictures of number 1s. So.
Okay, so yes, my number 1 is Homelander on the basis that of the people on my list, he is the one in need of the most fixing, and he is also the one who evokes the most of my empathy, because the dude just needs someone who actually gives a fuck about him.
Oh, right. I also, to make specifically the TV show Homelander.
Yeah. Yeah, and isn't trying to play some kind of game, because literally every time the man is given someone to give a damn about, he gets better, and every time that person who allegedly cares about him is shown to be some kind of trickster character, it inevitably makes him worse. So, like, the dude just seriously needs all the hugs and someone who's not going to treat him like a walking nuke. And I could give that, assuming he doesn't do to me what he did to Blind Spot, which, I mean, is a factor. But assuming that I could convince him not to do that, I would gladly be in a relationship with Homelander, and I wouldn't have any ulterior motive, unless you consider wanting to date the strongest man on the planet an ulterior motive, which I very much doubt counts as an ulterior motive. Because seriously, the dude needs all the hugs and someone who will treat him like he's not a fucking walking nuke. Because the fact that everyone treats him like a walking nuke is very much a self-fulfilling prophecy. If everyone treats him like he's dangerous and evil and stupid, then you're going to make him act like he's dangerous and evil and stupid by being immeasurable dickheads. And the fact that even his worst enemy is someone he treats as a friend should be enough to conclude that he has enough compassion in him to, make him a decent person, or at least a more decent person.
I mean,
It's
yeah,
just that no one ever bothers to give him a chance.
I mean, I think he would have had a chance if he was actually, like, he wasn't treated as an object when he was being tested on and stuff.
Yeah, if he weren't literally raised in a lab and treated like a science experiment, that would definitely be a thing. But even then, I think there is a path to redemption for Homelander. He just needs to be with someone who doesn't treat him like a walking nuke or a weapon. And I mean, obviously, if he wanted to, use his powers to romance me and everything, that would be perfectly acceptable. But like, I'm not going to treat him like a walking nuke or a weapon. I'm going to treat him like the person who very evidently needs all the hugs, because he does. I almost put Soldier Boy here, but the deciding factor was, since this is a I can fix them list, I wanted to go with the most fucked up, and the thing with Soldier Boy is he actually seems like the least fucked up of the characters on The Boys. So Homelander took the number one spot on the basis that he is the one in the need of the most fixing, and the person who excites the most of my empathy. And it's very hard to excite my empathy, but he manages to. That being said, there's also a possibility I wind up like Blind Spot, but
Right. Moving on to mine, and this should come to no surprise because this character is on my list every time February comes around. Nope. There we go. My number one is Princess Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
And once more, and as always, I reserve the right to bloodbend this bitch if she lightning stabs you through the heart.
So I have made it no secret that she was kind of one of the first animated girls when I was growing up watching cartoons that I had a crush on, and made me realize a lot of things about myself as I've gotten older. I just kind of respect, like, the reason why. Shut up, Dragon Turtle. I see that. Fuck off. So there was a very brilliant video by Sage's Reign that talks about the character of Azula. It's very well done, and but it really does become evident that she is just as broken, manipulated, and used by Ozai, but in a different way than Zuko, where Zuko is very blatantly abusive, while with Azula it is more subtle, because it's the favorite system, obviously, but it's still
classic. It's classic how to make a narcissist.
Yeah,
because she got the "you can do nothing wrong" and your daddy's little girl treatment, and it totally fucked her up.
I'm not gonna lie. Yes, she is fucked up, but there are multiple factors on why she's fucked up. It's like with Homelander. It's.
I mean, yeah, I have not many legs to stand on here because I want to love Homelander into not being a dick anymore. So there's that.
And you give me shit for wanting to do the same for Azula.
Okay, but here's a crucial difference between Azula and Homelander. When Homelander is given the opportunity to heal, or given the opportunity to think that someone gives a damn about him, he actually does, at least for as long as the person is willing to keep up the act, he actually does get better. He only backslides and gets worse again when it's shown that the person is manipulating him and that the affection that they were offering him was fake. Whereas Azula, even at her most emotionally vulnerable, straight up admitted that no, my mother was right about me. It just pisses me off that she thought that way.
I mean, again, you can make the fact that she's just putting on a guise, but
I mean, okay, but again, based on what we actually see in both of the respective shows, I actually have evidence that Homelander does have a person inside him. I don't think we ever see that with Azula. Even after her emotional breakdown, there's not really a person there anymore.
I also think I don't think either of us have seen the comics, but I do think there is some development of that character there.
Okay, fine. But still, I just wanted to highlight the difference between Homelander and Azula. With Homelander, there's at least evidence that he can be better when and if someone is acting as though they give a fuck about it. Whereas Azula never demonstrates any such fucking thing.
Here's the thing. I think well, for one thing, Azula, if we're to kind of mirror it with Zuko's situation, then her loss of the Agni Kai and stuff is her rock bottom, like Zuko's banishment was for him. Mm-hmm. Which is why I think legitimately after her loss of the Agni Kai, I would have a better chance in helping her, because she would more or less be somewhat open to.
And again, this might be something alluded to in the comics that I'm just not aware of. And if that's the case, like if she ends up going to like Iroh or even Zuko for help after the loss of the last Agni Kai, and that would at least be something in your favor. But I'm at this moment I'm going based on the shows, and Homelander has a better shot at dealing with his. Homelander has a better shot of healing, I think, than Azula does, which is tremendously fucked up given how fucked up Homelander is. But comparing like to like, comparing apples to apples here, I would rather spend time bashing on the blast doors of trauma that are Homelanders than I would on Azula, because, I mean, again, maybe it's something alluded to in the comics, but I don't even think she ever even has the necessary conversation with her mom about how fucked up she is. Whereas Homelander straight up begged his father for what he Homelander needed from his father, which is, love and affection and etc. And it was, Soldier Boy's weakest moment that he refused.
Again, I also can't just. I'm not gonna lie. Again, as I've said it many times, I like powerful, confident women, and she's got that in spades. So.
I mean, yeah, and like I said, when it comes to men, I prefer the hyper strong Paragon sort of characters, and that will become incredibly and increasingly evident as we go down my list. Anyway, my number 2.
1 second, and there we go.
Yeah, my number 2 is Jonathan Kent, Superboy, or Superman, depending. And he's here because the writers are currently writing him like an Antifa sympathizer Superman, and he wants to be quote unquote proactive in the progressive sense against crime, which has a danger of being very fascistic. And by danger, I mean it is rather explicitly fascistic if you're not, pro progressive. But he hasn't yet done anything like Omni Man esque. So he is, I think, prone. He is at least capable of being reasoned with, and I think if someone like me, who was philosophically literate enough to explain why his quote unquote proactive approach to crime fighting was worse than Clark's, I need to have a soft touch and I need not to get into the political space approach. I think he could be redeemed. And of course, yes, again, like I say, I like me some super strong Paragon characters. So there's that. Yeah. And he is explicitly gay, so I don't even have to
Bisexual.
fuck around with his Yeah, but I don't have to fuck around with the sexuality on this one, which is an added plus for me because normally I basically have to propose an alternate universe where characters are at least bisexual for any of my characters to even want me, but there's that.
I'm reminded of a video skit someone did of when they introduced the older John Kent as bi, where he was going to Damien because they're best friends, and it was like after his age up and stuff, and Damien already figured it out because a news article showed him a picture of him, and because not many people knew that Superboy was back and aged and had like hyper aged and stuff, that they thought it was his dad in a relationship with another guy.
And if that isn't a indictment of making John Kent the Antifa Superman in the first place, I don't know what is. But yeah, right as he's being written now, he's very much a quote unquote proactive Superman with like Antifa and Extinction Rebellion style sympathies. But if someone who cared about him actually explained why his philosophy was wrong, I genuinely think he could be reasoned with. At which point, I would once again have the strongest, or one of the strongest people on the planet, and that will never not be a good thing. Especially because in the DC universe, there's a spell that allows humans to replicate Kryptonian powers. So if I casted that on John, even his human weaknesses would no longer be a issue.
I also think you and Lois Lane would get along pretty well.
Oh my god, I don't even. Now I'm just imagining the bringing me home to meet the folks conversation. Like I'm imagining John bringing me home for like Thanksgiving or something, and there being this very very like awkward sort of interview thing going on.
Yeah.
Although, one of the benefits of dating me, if John dated me, was that I, being a magic practitioner, would cast a protection spell on him so that he was less vulnerable to magic.
He might actually, given that he is part human. be less since he's part human, from Earth, right? He might be less susceptible to magic. Not as much.
Right, but even so, the fact that none of Superman's magic friends have ever tried to put a protection spell on him, knowing full well that magic is one of his weaknesses, is either a writing oversight, which is most likely, or an in-universe these characters just being dicks and not thinking of it. Which in either case, I'm just imagining me going, okay, one, we'll cast the human getting Kryptonian powers on you so that your human half can no longer be a weakness for you. And two, I'm casting a bunch of protection spells on you so that you're no longer vulnerable to magic, because someone needs to be thinking with their fucking heads in this universe.
Mm.
Anyway, next, your number 2.
Yep, give me 1 second. Okay. I was just getting the picture ready. Okay, share screen. Number 2. Shigo.
Also, not surprising.
Shut up. Okay, can you blame me? Can any of you
no.
blame me? Yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
I can't and don't, but it's still. I've known you for a long time, man.
I have made my case very clear. Strong, confident, and powerful women. Okay, that's never gonna change.
Yeah, I know.
No matter what morality they have.
Yeah, that being said, you might have to fight Draken for her in this universe.
Draken's a bitch. I can beat his ass.
Oh God!
Am I wrong? He gets his ass
No,
kicked
you're
by
not. You're not wrong. I'm just imagining you manhandling Draken and like throwing him into a piranha tank or something.
Right, but okay. I mean, overall, comparative to Azula, she's actually a well-rounded person.
Yeah, she's not. She's far from irredeemable compared to Azula.
No,
I mean, she has a lot more raw, innate evil than Draken does, which is funny.
yeah.
But
I mean, she was willing to go steady with that could possibly be somewhat of a gold digger thing, but I mean, she was willing to go steady with like a legit business guy. So, deal breaker was that he had a kid. So,
which I mean is fair.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, before she was a hero, and also she has a fully credentialed teaching license. So she's not all bad.
Question: if given the option, would you zap her with the morality changing helmet thing?
Fuck no. That's basically like taking free will away from her. I wouldn't try to change her in that regard.
I figured that would be the answer. I just wanted to, because that is actually a MacGuffin in the Kim Possible universe.
I'm aware. That's why I didn't bring it up.
Yeah, I was just like, because we're talking about not only, that we could hypothetically fix these characters, but also kind of the hows and whys. So like,
if nothing else, I'd just be a very supportive partner, even when she's doing evil. Like, I don't think, if anything, I could think possibly I'd be trying to talk her out of like world domination. Chaos, sure, but
you two would be a very cute couple.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. With Shigo, I don't have nearly as many objections to her as I do Azula. Whereas if you were shacking up with Azula, I would be like, okay, studying bloodbending, and then I would go to her and be like, if you ever hurt him, I am going to do things to you that they literally could not show on television. Whereas with Chico, yeah, no, like even when she was being evil, she wasn't like that evil. It was very much cartoonish evil, and like for example, another Kim Possible example, Senior became evil because he was bored and had too much money that he didn't know what to do with, basically.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that just feels like a lot of rich people, even in our world.
I mean, I almost wanted to think about me shacking up with Senior Junior, but he's not like okay. So in the hypothetical that he got his hands on the molecular muscle enhancer ring, then I might consider dating Senior Junior, but not until then.
I thought you would be opposed to it because he's kind of a little bitch.
That honestly though just would end up coming off to me as sweet.
Okay.
Because then my protective instinct would kick in. If he started crying and whatnot, I would go, okay, so how many ways do you want to die, person who made him upset? but yeah, he would have to get hold of the molecular muscle enhancer rings before I would consider him.
All right. Let me move. Okay, so we're moving on to your number 3 then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Presents. Although you're not wrong, Dragon Turtle. Azula would kill you. She'll just throw you across the room. Bold of you to assume I wouldn't be into that.
Well, Brainstormer has this whole thing about sparring with his partners. Like I keep telling him about Murphy from Dresden Files and how much he would be into her, and it still has yet to convince him to read Dresden Files. Although while we're on the topic, I also think that Brainstormer and Sigrun would go over well. And on the topic of characters we could fix, I'm pretty sure that if Brainstormer knew who Lara Wraith was, he would be trying to fix her. But that's neither here nor there. My number 3 is Titan from Megamind. Because as I see it, the main problem here is that Roxanne wasn't into him. Whereas if she had been into him or was willing to at least give him a try, once he got Metro Man's powers, he wouldn't have been as ethical as Metro Man, but he could have at least been reasoned with. It was the rejection that stung and made it worse. So, in the hypothetical where he was gay and after me rather than Roxanne, that movie has a much happier ending because I would actually be into him enough that he probably would be willing to ease off the villainy a little bit for me. Although, in fairness, I probably wouldn't be entirely against him destroying things to prove his love to me. So there's that. But yeah, I would totally. If I were in Roxanne's place, that movie has a much more boring but happier ending because I go, yeah, sure, and then we literally fly off into the sunset.
All right, so this is something Dragon Troll said earlier that I didn't catch until just now. That reminds me, wanted your opinion on something, Dawn. Apparently there was a comic where Satana's dad told Batman that he shouldn't learn magic because someone like him with that power would become something really dark. Is that BS or actually something to it?
I believe I know the one you mean, and I don't hate it. It does make a certain level of sense. I still call bullshit that Batman never tried to learn it from anyone else in the DC universe, or didn't try to learn any other systems of magic, because there are like a dozen different systems of magic, not to mention different entities and power sources of magic he could have worked with. But semantics. It also kind of flies in the face of an episode of
Animated.
Batman the Animated Series where Batman actually ended up using magic to recombine a magical artifact that had separated Jason Blood and Etrigan.
No, that was the New Adventures of Batman and Robin, or New Adventures of Batman. It's in the same.
But it's a continuation of the animated series. I just call them both the animated series because
yeah,
it's usually not worth making much of a distinction between the two. In any case, Batman used magic there, demonstrating that A, he can, and B, he probably did learn something from Zatara or Zatanna when he was going through his going through his self-improvement phase.
Sorry, I was going to interject. I mean, to be fair, comics Batman is a little more mentally unstable than DC animated universe.
Yeah, especially lately. But yeah, the reasoning makes sense. I reject the notion that Batman never, or Bruce never, opened up a grimoire. You're telling me the man who is kooky enough to want to acquire every skill under the sun just drew the line at magic because Zatara said that might not go well for you. And you're further telling me that Constantine never offered, that Zatanna never offered, that Dr. Fate never offered, that there are so many magic-based characters that owe Batman several favors and never even told him the even just basic shit. That being said, I can see where Zatara is coming from, because given that magic is a little bit like Captain America Super Soldier Serum. It feeds on everything in you, so good becomes great, bad becomes worse. So I can see where he's going. I call bullshit number one because Batman is a skill monkey. He wants to learn all the skills he can learn, and I find it baffling he never picked up even the basics of magic. But two, given that a large part of his training was in Eastern mysticism and shit anyway, you would have thought that in his learning of Shaolin Kung Fu and etc., he would have learned the kind of mental discipline that could have kept those side effects at bay if he decided to learn magic.
Anyway, moving on.
Anyway, yeah, moving on.
Be my number 3, right?
Yep.
All right. Asajj Ventress from Star Wars: The Clone Wars series. I feel like you're gonna.
No, it makes sense for you. It definitely makes sense for you. I mean,
to be fair, she's a complicated, one of the most complicated characters in the Star Wars mythos.
Of the Dathomir characters, though, I would think that Mother Talzin is the right answer, but that's just me.
I feel like she and I have a lot more in common than Mother Talzin and I.
This is also true.
So the interesting thing about her is that, again, she's not too far gone. Because she was actually trained. She's had a multitude of masters, ranging from both Sith and Jedi.
Yeah. And I mean, she knows at least a little bit of Night Sister magic.
Mm-hmm.
Even though not much, because that whole thing happened, but...
Alright. And even though she's... Well, I will say she's a bit ruthless. I mean, granted, given her role and mentor.
I feel like she would try to do that forehead tap maneuver that the Night Sisters do when they want to mind control people, and then I would have to kill her again.
But even when she kind of stayed out of the conflict between the Jedi and the Sith during the Clone Wars, she wasn't she didn't really do anything bad. She was a bounty hunter, which, I mean, given the skills she has,
works for her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do sort of wonder what would have happened if she had the more thorough Night Sister training after leaving Dooku. assuming that Grievous and his droids didn't come in and completely shit the bed for everyone, and Asajj had gotten full on Night Sister training, I wonder what would have happened then.
Mm-hmm. But ultimately, she does just seem like a person who is kind of, I won't say lost, but wants some form of purpose. To do something.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is something I kind of can agree with and relate to. So yeah, like again, it's like with Shigo, I don't think, while I wouldn't try to change her too much, I at least think I could be a good rock for her.
I think that Ventress is a little bit more fucked up than Shigo, hence why I would be watching her like a hawk to make sure she didn't Night Sister, mind control you and everything. And if she did, then bets are off. I'm killing the bitch. But yeah, of your I could fix them list, I think Shigo and you would make the best couple. Then Ventress and you, and then Azula and you so far.
Wouldn't try to bang him, but think Grievous, at least in Legends, is salvageable.
With regards to characters that I would bang in Star Wars, I think Savage Opress is the only one that springs readily to mind. Because while I would gladly apprentice to Mother Talzin, there's nothing romantic there for me in her case. But with Savage, especially after the Night Sister ritual that made him jacked as hell, he's cute. Would date Savage.
All right. Moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Salvageable. I just got that. That's good. That was good.
Tish.
Yeah. Salvageable is enabled to be redeemed or at least significantly morally improved. Yeah. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm. My number 4 is Mon El from the most recent Legion of Superheroes movie. His big quote unquote villain motivation is that he wants the world or the universe to belong to people that are exceptional. So all I would need to do in his case is demonstrate that I'm exceptional in some way. And then again, I would basically have a mostly Paragon character. So
I don't really have anything to say to this just because I haven't seen that movie. I'll be honest, the Tomorrowverse, which is what has been dubbed, it's somewhat off-putting to me.
yeah, the DC animated universes have gotten worse and worse over time, I think.
I think the issue is like it just feels like it's skipping a lot of things that kind of need to be built up.
The best DC animated universe is still the one from my childhood, where Paul Dini and Bruce Timm were working together.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would in fact date Mon El, and I don't think he would be as difficult to fix as see when I was making this list, I put the person in most need of fixing on the top of the list, which was Homelander, because I assumed we were going to go in descending order, or in ascending order rather, but then Brainstormer switched on me, so there's that. So yeah, the characters on the bottom of my list are the ones that are in the least need of fixing in this list, because the premise of the list is that I can fix them, so I sort of ranked it based on how much work am I going to need to do to fix them, and also how much empathy do they excite in me in order to convince me to fix them. And that is why Homelander was number 1, because he needs all the hugs.
Moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My number 4 is there we go. Karai from the TMNT 2012 series, which is the one I kind of grew up with mostly.
Yeah, I remember Karai from the version before this, but yeah.
No, I do too. Like, okay, again, I'm in this weird age bracket where I saw the 2000.
Yeah, you're a very early Zoomer, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm a very late millennial.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why we work so well together.
That could be one of the many reasons.
Yeah.
Yes.
This Karai is super interesting. She has a lot more of a personality compared to the Karai of the 2003 one, which didn't really get as much focus.
I mean, I liked her, and I liked seeing her again when they did the TMNT movie. Because by all rights, I think we're supposed to assume that the 2003 series is in continuity with the TMNT movie somewhere.
I honestly couldn't tell you.
Because I think the voice actors were the same. A lot of the character models, despite one being 3D and one being 2D, were very similar. And I'm pretty sure Karai's voice actor was also the same in the TMNT movie as in the 2003 series. But yeah, as a general rule, I haven't seen the 2012 version, but as a general rule, the ranking of characters on your I Can Fix Them list that would require the least overbearing protectiveness from me would be Shigo, then Karai, then Ventress, then I can't remember who else was on your list. But
Zula.
Other than Azula, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So far, at least. So the reason why I picked her one is because, again, to be fair, she has a redemption arc in the show. This Karai is very interesting because she's actually the daughter of Splinter, her Hamato Yoshi, that was taken by Shredder when she was an infant, and was raised as his daughter.
Damn, baby napping.
And when the Shredder died, she became the leader of the Foot Clan, which caused an internal civil war as she tried to make it a better thing, you know. She's pretty confident, pretty strong, and again, everyone knows this about me. I like strong, confident women. It's just
you also like women you could spar with, which I swear to God, you will love Karen Murphy if you ever get around to reading Dresden Files. You will probably also have a thing for Sigrun Guard, and if we ever do a I Can Fix Them list again after you've read the Dresden Files, I fully expect there to be Lara Wraith on your list next time we do this.
Plus, she does have the aesthetic of a goth girl, and no one can tell me otherwise that is not something a lot of people find attractive.
Yeah, I agree. The women that I like also tend to be rather gothy. Speaking of which, in relation to the characters from Dresden Files that I expect Brainstorm will probably have a thing for, you will probably really, really like Molly. She is Harry's apprentice in the latter books, and she very much has a goth/emo aesthetic.
Yeah, that's really all I got for Karai here. It has been a while since I've seen the show, so like a decade or so. Yeah, she's not as like far gone as many had thought when the show first aired. Plus, she's fun. You know, she is still a teenager, despite being also a highly trained killer. So she has her fun like teenage moments, and honestly, growing up, I kind of feel like I would need that a lot. Anyway, moving on to Dalton's last one, which is one that kind of, I will admit, came out of left field for me. Give me 1 second. Okay. God damn it. Okay. Don't know what that happened. All right.
Warrior Angel from Smallville. And this one is going to require some backstory because you see, during the time when Smallville was still airing in the later seasons, DC and Marvel were going through a court battle with the character Captain Marvel, who would later become renamed as Shazam. And so I'm assuming that's the reason why they didn't end up using Captain Marvel or Shazam in the later years in the latter years of Smallville. But they kind of got around it by creating their own character. The premise for Warrior Angel is basically Zatara of the Smallville universe was kind of a dick, or went through a phase where he was a bit of a dick, and created a bunch of cursed objects. And one of those cursed objects was a cursed comic book featuring a character called Warrior Angel that was basically, again, kind of a Shazam-esque character. And the premise of it was, if any child ever read this comic, he would become endowed with the powers described in the comic and would experience, quote, the effects of true power. But there was also a cursed aspect to the comic whereby if anyone ever pisses them off, they go from being a Paragon type hero to an anti hero type hero, or rather a villainous type character, basically where the rage takes them over and they become hyper destructive. And then, of course, Zatanna has to take the curse off him and yada yada, and the powers go away, etc. But if I were in the Smallville universe and I was still me, i.e., have my magic, I could just tweak the curse so that he could keep the powers without having the and then when someone pisses you off you go insane part. And then again, basically a Supermanish archetype. So yeah. Also, speaking of that, there's another source of quasi-Kryptonianish powers in the Smallville universe, which are these like magical crystals that for some reason are buried in a mine in Smallville. So, one, I could tweak Zatara's spell, but failing that, assuming it was too difficult or his mastery was so much greater than mine that I couldn't tweak it, there is the other option of giving Kryptonian powers to the kid anyway and just doing it that way. So, yeah. The reason he's the lowest on my list is because he is the one I would need to do the least for to salvage or for to fix, which because the thing that drives him insane eventually and quote unquote curses him is the curse that gives him his powers. But that can be tweaked and rewritten if you know what you're doing, so I would just tweak it if I had to. And then he stays in good boy Paragon mode, and then again, I win.
Okay, so I'm moving on to my number 5, which, when I first told Dalton this, he was actually quite surprised. You don't remember my number 5, do you?
I don't.
Are you about to be surprised again?
It is possible.
Number 5. Harley Quinn from Batman the Animated Series.
Ah, yes, okay. Now I remember why I was surprised.
To be completely transparent, I am picking Batman the Animated Series version specifically. One, because it's the original, started, and it's the best thing.
Not the cheerleader of death that she became later.
But because while she is evil and somewhat complicit in the Joker schemes. I'm not going to deny that. Because of Mad Love, it is fairly evident that she is highly manipulated and very, I want to argue, codependent on the Joker.
Yeah, there was
Again,
also a episode where
Mad Love.
Batman and Harley were together or for a day or so, and she almost got talked out of her evil ways towards the end.
Yeah, she's not a.
She's not a bad person. She's just doing bad things.
It's I can't remember which one it was. If it was Paul Dini or if it was Bruce Timm said in an interview, like one of the behind the scenes things for this. But it's like I'm paraphrasing, of course. The cheerleader that's with the jerk, like the bully jock.
Mm-hmm.
You feel bad for her because you know that's not like it's not a good relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like Don said, she's not bad. She's doing bad things. Full transparency. I'm aware of that. But this version specifically, not the versions that have tried to make her into a hero, more or less.
Yeah, the cheerleader of death.
Yeah. Can do good. I mean, in the end of Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, it showed that she had a normal life, that she was the grandmother to twins that became part of the Joker gang. Which implies that she found someone else and was able to readjust to normal life in some way.
Unless the daughters and therefore granddaughters are actually biologically connected to the Joker, which would be interesting.
It doesn't look like it, to be fully honest.
I mean, maybe not, but it has also. They seem to take more after Harley in terms of looks, anyway. Because while we don't often see Harley outside of the Mad Love episode and the occasional moments where she like takes her hat off, she does kind of have that sort of blonde, blue-eyed vibe to her, which I believe the twins also do. Which that must have been that must have been an awkward conversation. Hey, Mom, you know your ex, the one that you did all those criminal things with. Yeah, we kind of joined a gang that's based on him and his exploits.
It seems to be her granddaughters, to be fair. Dragon Turtle, it's like a post-credit scene for the movie or an end-credit scene. Most of the characters do think she's dead or MIA. But it's revealed that she is a
grandma.
Yeah.
Doesn't she scold them? I think she scolds them, doesn't she?
And gives them a whack on the buttocks with her cane. So.
Yeah, which again, this must have been a very hilarious, although awkward, family conversation afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Which I do wonder how much of the twins joining the Joker gang was stories of Grandma Harley telling them about her ex.
But yeah, again, she is the version of Harley Quinn that I legitimately do think has the better.
She's the version that made the character iconic in the first fucking place. It wasn't the cheerleader of death that made her iconic.
Plus, she's fun, like again, I think it would take time, and I kind of would have to demythologize the Joker for her.
Mm-hmm.
Show him that he's just a man. Because I think that's kind of the issue why she keeps running back to him, is that she thinks he's
Be-
more
be-
than.
yeah, because she thinks he's if not better than her, at least important to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that level of like status and like the mythic quality of him keeps her enthralled.
Yeah.
Though that reminds me of the episode. I don't remember the context of the episode, but there was an episode where he like tried to replace her as an assistant, and then she snuck into Arkham and pretended to be a police officer, and then beat him over the head repeatedly with a billy club.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, like when I mean, to be fair, she, even before the Joker kind of turned her, she was actually a respectable. Again, she's a respectable doctor. Again, you know, as much as I like strong, powerful women, I also respect intelligence a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, she also is willing to engage with a Tommy gun when necessary, so it's not like you're not getting at least a little bit of the badass female character.
no, I will admit,
from it.
and every guy, well, everyone should know this golden rule of don't stick it in crazy. But I'm gonna be fully honest, she might actually be one of the very few that I make the exception for.
That's
'Cause
very sweet.
To be fair, I don't think she's as crazy as most people think she is.
Well, no, she's just love struck,
Yeah.
basically. And in fairness, I like it better when the Joker and Harley are complementarily crazy, and therefore they're kind of a more fucked up version of Gomez and Morticia. But yeah, in this case particularly, it's made very clear that basically whenever Harley is away from the Joker, she gets better as a person. So because she got better with Ivy, she got better with that one episode with Batman. She even probably got better in the episode where he dumped her and looked for a replacement, and then she beat the shit out of him and told him not to do it again. Good for you, Harley.
That's an interesting question, Jackal, and I'm not too sure myself. Is Harley what happens when you are on good terms with your yandere girlfriend, but you are also crazy?
I mean,
I wouldn't. I don't know if you would qualify Harley, especially again the animated series one, as a yandere.
Yeah, no, I think Joker in that instance is a yandere, but I don't think she is. In other versions, most definitely. Again, in quite a lot of versions, again, there are more fucked up version of Gomez and Morticia, and I do like those
There's
versions.
actually a comic that came out within the recent years called Harleen. It's amazingly well drawn, by the way. I think explores the psychology of Harley Quinn. That does it rather well, I think.
Yeah, like and she's an interesting character, and the fact that she was created basically for the animated series and became so popular that she became a character in her own right, even though she's not written well, and even though they turned her into the cheerleader of death and that's shitty and everything. Like, it is remarkable that Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, when they were firing on all cylinders, were able to create a character who both was original to the animated series but fit in so well that she ended up crossing back over to the comic universe. Wish she more resembled her original counterpart more often. But then again, I also like, as I say, I like the idea that it's not necessarily that Joker is abusive. It's they're both nuts, and abusing each other is sort of how they show affection to each other. Again, think of Gomez and Morticia, just more fucked up, more explicitly.
I mean, to be fair, I won't. I don't think the Joker is too full of himself and too in love with himself that he doesn't really have, or obsessed with Batman.
Yeah, no, the man, his heart is already spoken for, insofar as it can be spoken for anything.
But
he wants the bat. He wants the bat, and there's no getting around that, I'm afraid.
But in in his darkest pit that you would call a heart, like the empty void, there is a tiniest, and I do specify tiny, tiny, tiny sliver of affection for Harley or Harley.
I mean, there are also, speaking of characters that Joker and Harley have parallels with. There's also, again, also more like the Joker and Harley are more fucked up than Clarice and Hannibal Lecter, but because I think Hannibal is far more in touch with the fact that he actually cares for Clarice. But um, there are also definitely parallels between Harley and Harley and the Joker and Clarice and Hannibal. I mean, hell, the whole impetus behind Mad Love is kind of a Silence of the Lambs style scenario. It's just
Mhm.
Harley is a psychiatrist and not a cop or not a FBI agent. That being said, if dangerous former criminals are your thing, Harley, find your way over to the Thomas Harris universe and get with Hannibal. It would be much safer and more steady for you, I think, in most cases.
Um, I don't know. I do think she is somewhat like it's kind of a tie between her and Shigo that would be the easiest to fix in a way.
I actually think there's a tiny likelihood that Harley is easier to fix than Shigo, because Shigo actually does, it's been shown many times, have an evil streak in her, whereas
Yeah, that's fair.
Harley, I don't think does actually have that much of an evil streak in her.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
At least not the animated series version. Other versions are a different story, but the original Paul Dini vs. Tim animated series version, I don't think does actually have an evil streak in her. Where Shigo, she's a naughty girl. Even though she would probably be the second most easy to fix of your list, she does have that evil streak in her.
Yeah, that's fair. So I guess with that, folks, because nothing really else to say. With that, I guess I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, avidazai, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom, and for the love of all things, fuck off.